Welcome into episode number
12!
We're halfway there.
Whoa,
How
we're
cool is that?
halfway there.
Yeah, please don't sing. Please don't.
Sorry for everybody.
But talking about singing.
Wait, we didn't even say what we're episode 12 of.
Cashin The Check.
The check.
Sorry, I get ahead of myself.
Yeah, I know,
you know
you
that.
got all excited. I know, it's been a little bit since we've been recording.
has been a while.
So we're excited to be here today.
It's
We got our coffee going and
yeah, we got coffee. We're in the morning this time, so we're gonna bring some energy today. We're excited to be here. Speaking of singing, let's just dive right into
outside the box.
outside the box. We're
So,
changing things up.
We got some feedback from
People
all of
liked
our
it.
followers on the last episode, and they liked us.
So we're gonna change it up. We're gonna go outside the box and
Do a little personal stuff about ourselves.
Yeah, this is
So
exciting.
we both are parents,
Yep.
and we both have middle school daughters,
We
which
do.
is probably the most biggest time of die of embarrassment.
Yeah, I will second that 100%. So I'm just gonna this morning on the way to school, I'm all into the 90s country, and I got my oldest. We're going into school.
All good. Shout out to all good middle school.
Yeah, shout out to Ogden Middle School. We're rolling in, and I did it to her the week before because it was 80s Day, and we were singing Kiss. But I rolled the windows down, and I had some Mark Chestnut on going through the Big D, and I turn it up right as we're about to pull up, and I start singing it. And she is like, that is the
Dying.
quickest. Listen, if you're a parent, you want to get your kids out of the car very quickly, just find some old songs that they will embarrass them and start singing it and roll them. That was the fastest that kid ever got out of the truck. It was like, bye, I love you. And she head was down, and other kids were looking, and I was like, yeah, parenting win.
How do you get your kids into the car as fast as possible? I don't know if you have this problem, but my kids, I'm like, it's time to go.
It's like a sloth.
Yeah, and I'm like, it's time to go. We leave at the same time every day.
But you don't get in the car, though. You just walk them to school.
Yeah, most of the time.
Okay.
But I'm like, I'll just start walking down the driveway without them because they just, I'm like,
That's
we're
me.
going. Let's go.
So my wife, being a teacher, she likes to get there early.
Yeah.
And so she's like, girls, I'm leaving in 3 minutes. And she's literally, you better be in the car because she will back up. There was one morning a couple of years ago, she literally just left them, and I had to take them to school. And she was like, girls, I'm leaving.
I mean, when you have a job that you have to get to at a certain time, it matters. That is
Oh, yes.
important. And so kids don't have respect for that sometimes. I like to, speaking of embarrassing things and the school drop-offs, at Allgood Elementary, they, the stopper guy directing traffic.
The traffic.
It's a teacher that he just stops and makes people get out of the car at the same time.
Okay.
So it's not a traffic guy, but he plays
Crossing
music.
guard
It's
is
not
the
a
name.
crossing guard. It is just a teacher. And he plays music, and I will dance sometimes. I love.
Oh, I bet that embarrasses them.
Yeah, and it's both of them. The little one doesn't matter as much. The elementary, you can't. She still thinks
Yeah, you
I'm
can't do
cool a little bit.
My middle child and my youngest child go to the same school where my wife teaches. And so when they call for my wife over the intercom, or here a while back, I think the principal said, hey, Mrs. Asher suggested that we wear jeans or something. Our middle daughter was full on embarrassed.
Anytime they would just say her name.
I hate when they say Mrs.
Oh my
Asher.
gosh.
She's like, everyone knows that's my mom. It's just embarrassing.
Have I ever had her in class?
No,
Okay.
she won't.
Yeah,
go in
I
the
don't
class.
think I would have enjoyed. I previously taught. I don't think I would have enjoyed having my kids.
I wouldn't want my kids in class.
No.
Because my expectations for them would have been through the roof.
Yeah, and I like to, when my tween daughter likes to get a little agitated, I just like to laugh and kind of poke fun. And it used to make her crack a smile, and now she's gotten to the point where she just mocks me. And I'm like, listen, girl, we're gonna have to get rid of that because mocking me is not an option.
It doesn't do you any good.
No,
If anything, it makes me want to I'll power through this.
Yeah. So, that's embarrassing.
Well,
Our
now
kids.
that they know a little more about us,
Yeah, we're gonna do the big picture.
we'll do the big picture, and this is actually a pretty hot topic.
Yeah.
But I think we have a lot in common, so it should be good. This is very much a business-related topic, I feel like.
And it's so
It's
now
relevant.
it's really heavy.
It's very heavy.
And we 3 months ago, or when we started this podcast, I never would have thought that at episode 12 we'd be having this conversation still. So we're talking about COVID.
We're going to talk about the
The
Rona.
big C word. So the Rona,
And we're just talking about from a business perspective,
making the right, quote unquote. So those that
Yeah.
are just listening,
quote unquote,
the right decision.
right business decisions for you. Now, let's just kind of dive right into it. Maybe you own let's just say you own let's go insurance, because I spent,
Okay.
you own an insurance agency. What would you think would be the right decision to do for COVID? So let's go on the side of protecting your employees. What would you do?
Well, I have said kind of this whole time, I'm glad that I'm not in charge of really
Right.
anything. I'm glad I'm not in charge of the Biz Foundry because I want other people to research. I want other people to make those heavy, hard decisions. But it's been tough. I think that a big thing we're working through right now is, do you cancel in-person events or do you cancel?
That happened to me yesterday. We were supposed to go to Denver in November, and they emailed us yesterday, and they're like, "Yeah, we decided we're going to cancel it, and move it virtually." And I'm like, "No!"
I know. Well,
I just got back from Philadelphia,
and it was awesome.
It was
right?
in person. It was awesome.
Well, and we were supposed to have Launch Tennessee puts on 3686 Festival, which is a entrepreneurship conference in Nashville, and that was supposed to be later this month. And a month or two ago, they decided to cancel, and it was going to be. I mean, I love going to it. It's in the honky tonks downtown Nashville. It's so great.
That '90s country is coming through.
Yeah, it's so great to connect to people. We were going to have a Powered by Her panel, rocking and rolling, and then they just canceled it, and it's like, I get that that's an important decision, and sometimes you have to make those decisions for other people. So in place of a business and insurance agency, maybe people don't want to wear a mask when they have their customers come in, but maybe that's where we're at, where that's what's most important, or that's the decision that you need to make.
I've not been one to be forthcoming about wearing a mask. I just don't like it. I think it's very uncomfortable, but I'm also trying to be respectful if a business asks me to do so and I want to trade or shop at that business. I do what they ask me to do.
Yeah.
I don't think you should punish a business because they want you to do one thing, because I think sometimes they're just trying to make a decision that protects their employees. Like, it's not we're doing it because we believe this way or that way. We're just trying to do everything we can to prevent our employees from being sick, so that we can continue to operate, so I can continue to basically pay my bills. So I think sometimes businesses get punished, and all they're trying to do is just do what they think is right to protect their employees.
And this was, in Hip Cookville or whatnot months ago, people, both sides.
We're bashing people. And I'm like, why?
And it was both ways. I will never shop at this place again because they make me wear a mask. I will never shop at this place again because they don't make me wear a mask. And it's like, everybody's trying. I kept saying, we're all trying to do the best we can. No one's trying to do the wrong thing.
I agree.
And so it's just been a tough situation. And I think as knowing when you're putting somebody at risk, for sure, you need to make some heavy choices. We had a speaker that was going to come in, and she had been exposed. She closed her business down, and I said, if you go get tested and have a negative test, and she chose not to do that. And so I said, I can't knowingly put you in a room with people, but we're all kind of putting ourselves at risk every day.
Yeah. And that was the thing too. And what's so funny now is, a couple weeks ago, my youngest daughter got sick, and we were like, oh, this is not what we need. So take her to the doctor. She gets tested for RSV, flu, strep, COVID. She got tested for COVID twice in one doctor's sitting. So they did rapid and the send off.
Yeah.
Everything was negative, and they're like, "Oh, it's some kind of upper respiratory." And I'm like, and you're as a parent, you're like, oh, "Okay, great, it's not COVID."
Yeah.
So now you're on. You just have to watch them and do the best you can. So for me, I get where employers are like, "Hey, we're just trying to do the best we can." I know a lot of times, there's still certain restaurants and areas that are just drive-through only.
Yeah.
Because they just feel they can do some protection.
And that's okay.
And that's okay, yeah.
That's
absolutely.
okay. That's the biggest thing, is that any choice you make,
I think
okay.
too is that the entrepreneur, the owners need to just say, look, I don't know if this is the right decision, but at least they are making a decision that they feel is the best for their employees. And to me, that sometimes by not making a decision is the wrong decision. Sometimes just making a decision that says, hey, we're going to be drive-through only from now until we can figure things out. There's nothing wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Or hey, now we've closed the office, so we're if you want to do virtual appointments, we can do that. Or if you want to meet in person, we're just not doing that right now. So I think sometimes just making a decision, even if it's the wrong decision, is the best decision.
Well, I think and I mean, people have said this so much, just being respectful and kind of whatever, just really, truly know deep in your heart, no one's trying to make the wrong decision.
Oh, yeah.
No one's trying to make your life miserable.
I don't think people wake up and are like, you know what, I'm just going to cause trouble today in this.
Yeah.
If you do, you have way too much time on your hands. I'll be honest.
For sure.
Totally. So let's just jump over.
Drinking the Kool-Aid.
So let's talk about vaccine mandates for a business. And so I will say I'm vaccinated.
This is like, we're going to just say we're so sorry. This is a really heavy
but
episode.
I think we need to talk about this.
It is very
it's something
important.
that COVID has brought to light on a lot of things.
Yeah.
Whether you believe it or not, I mean, that's I asked my doctor, she said, hey, you have a touch of asthma? She said, I would highly encourage you to consider getting vaccinated.
So mandatory vaccinations for your employers on their
I'll be honest to you, I struggle with because I think a lot of time in general, like especially in the U.S., I think a lot of times when you tell people they have to do something, it's kind of like your kids when you say, you've got to go clean your room, and they're like, no, I'm not cleaning it. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes when you tell them, hey, you have to do this, I feel like a lot of people are like, I'm not doing it because you told me I have to do it.
Well, but don't you think that when your child says that, you're like,
I'll show you.
What you thinking, kid?
Yeah.
And that's where I kind of feel like, are people just bucking against the system?
I think a lot of people are just bucking against. You told me, hey, I have to do this to be able to try whatever it is. A lot of people are like, no, I'm not doing it.
So I was talking to a friend the other day, and she really lives a holistic lifestyle. She has her own chickens, and
right.
She actually slaughters her own chickens to eat. She, uses the meat or the eggs and stuff like that. So she lives a very natural lifestyle. She doesn't do flu vaccines. She doesn't really take medication. I understand her reason for not wanting a COVID vaccine because that's her whole entire life. She lives that way all over. People who go through the McDonald's drive-thru and then say, I don't want to put that in my body. Yeah. And I'm like, you don't live a holistic life.
I agree with that because,
it's just tough. I'm not judging.
Yeah, no, I think that a lot of times you see this, and we've talked about this. My wife and I went through this whole lifestyle change. We've lost a bunch of weight. We've changed the way we do things. And I can tell a huge difference by we're watching what we eat and how we feel. Mm-hmm. And I agree. I get frustrated when people are like, well, I'm not taking a vaccine, but you'll go to Taco Bell. No, I'm not throwing shade at restaurants, but you'll go through somewhere and eat something, and you're like, do you even know what's in that? Mm-hmm. Or you'll vape, and you're like, do you not know what you just vaped? I mean, there's kind of the...
there's a balance of things. So we're all kind of talking from the perspective of an employee, but what about the employer? Is it okay for an employer to say that their staff needs to go get vaccinated?
I think that I don't think there's anything wrong with encouraging. Maybe you give them, hey, if you're like, I told you this. When I got my first shot, my arm was sore. When I got the second shot, like it took me out for 2 days. Like, and that's not normal for me to be out for 2 days and to miss a meeting. So for me, I thought I was dying over the first day. Maybe it's something where, hey, if you get vaccinated, we give you the day off, or you may get the day after off in case you're sick. It doesn't count against you. We'll pay you. I'm all about incentivizing, not necessarily like money, but like how you get the day off.
And that's exactly the way you treat your kids, right?
Yeah.
You're going to get much better results if you say, hey, if you go clean your room, we can have ice cream or whatever the reward is, but there's some sort of reward. I don't know that it's a bad idea that you could say you get $50 if you get the vaccine.
Well, I'm all by. To me, where I struggle with the whole ordeal is like, is it really a like a true, now I'm not a medical professor. I wasn't smart enough. I barely got through college. It took me 10 years, but I look at it from a perspective of, if it's a vaccine, like we both have smallpox vaccine. We're not going to get smallpox. That's what I consider a vaccine.
Yeah.
Is this more of a prevent? Maybe
This
maybe
is
it's preventative, and maybe we should put it in the perspective. Hey, this is not a true like.
But they call it a flu vaccine.
But it doesn't really like.
So I've been in phases where there's times where I get a flu vaccine and there's times where I don't. And usually what happens is I'll get in a track where I get it 3 or 4 years. And then I get the flu and I get so angry about getting the flu that I'm like, screw the vaccine. I'm not taking it anymore.
See, and I'm at that point
Which
too where
I think it's a virus that it's a similar kind of vaccine.
I'm at the point where normally if I take the flu shot, I get the flu. But if I don't take the flu shot, I don't get the flu.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of that where people are like, well, this is a virus. It's not something like if I get it, I'm going to die. It's a 60% survival rate. I think that people, it affects people differently. Mm-hmm. And so they go back and say, well, I never get the flu shot. I don't get the flu. So maybe if I don't get this vaccine, I'm not going to get COVID. I personally, this is my opinion, I think it has a lot to do with the blood type. We've talked about this off podcast. I think a lot has to do with your blood type and maybe, too, the way you take care of yourself.
I'm sure. Well, everything health-wise has to do with the way you take care of yourself. And so you're a lot more likely to have other health issues.
Let me ask you this. You own a business. You own, I don't know, whatever it is. And you interact with the public on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. What would you do to, A, protect your employees? Let's talk about that first. What would you do? What decisions would you make?
So I do think that you can have your employees say, if you are not going to get vaccinated, that you wear a mask, obviously, and you can make a mask mandate in your business. But it takes a lot to go against the norm, especially in Tennessee. In Tennessee, the norm is not to wear masks. The norm is to just live your life. I mean,
I hear that. Like, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I was in Philadelphia a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
It was kind of the same way.
Really?
It was like, we go to this event and people like, they had different bracelets. So like if you wanted handshakes, you had a different color. If you wanted to like elbows, you had a different color. And if you didn't want anything, you had a different color. Well, there was like 300 people. I think I saw like 2 red bracelets out of all the people. And immediately when people got in the rooms, their masks were off. It was like they did just enough to get through the door, and after that, it was over with. And that was in a different state.
I mean, I went to Asheville in November last year, and Asheville, it's a pretty liberal area. And so, I mean, you had to wear a mask into the restaurants. You had to keep your mask on when the waiter came, and everybody was, and this was November, but still, everybody was wearing masks.
See, and it's just funny how it is in different parts and different states.
And my family's in Michigan, and so they went through it was crazy last year. I said, we don't live in the same, my family would say, this country, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, we don't live in the same country. You don't live in the same life and the same things that I see. It's just not the same.
How would you, if you were an employee, how would you want your employer to handle the situation?
Okay, so I talked about this the other day where somebody said, would you want the government mandating us to wear masks all the time? And I'm like, I don't know that I would say no, just because I think if the government I'm pretty trusting overall. And so I think I don't like to research. I don't want to read 17 articles about COVID, and I don't want to look at, I'll look at a chart that has statistics, but, and so I feel like if there's some mandate put in place, there's a reason for it. And so as my employer, I think a lot of people would be mad if their employer said, you have to get vaccinated, you have to wear a mask, you can't ever have in-person meetings. I think a lot of people would be upset about that. Me personally, I would just think, well, there must be a reason for this. That's probably a bad.
Well, I mean, people have different views and they look at things totally different.
Yeah.
I'm kind of the point where me and my wife had this conversation where I don't want to live my life in constant fear or, we're going on a trip in a few weeks. And so for me, I'm just like, I just want to live my life. I'm going to take every precaution necessary to go on about my life. I get in the car, I wear my seatbelt, I try to drive the speed limit. You know, you do certain things. I feel like, you know, you make sure your tires have the correct air in them.
That's not me, but
well, I mean, but you do like maintenance on your car to make sure it operates at a specific like
oil changes and stuff.
But
what? So but see, you work for the government too. We both essentially kind of do, and so the government, you know, I mean, it's just a tough situation, I think. But here's the other thing. On the last episode, we talked about local influencers.
Yes.
And I do think that there's benefits from having the vaccine. And I think that there are benefits from the general public and population, more people having the vaccine.
Yeah.
And so I do think that when we can find local influencers to help highly suggest or put a little pressure on those situations, I do think that is worthwhile.
I agree. I think too, when you mandate things, I think it goes back to what people just are like, you know what, I'm not doing it because you make us do it. And then I read an article, and it might even be a local health provider said, hey, you know what I do not see is people, you know, yes, I think when you have vaccines, you're going to have adverse reactions. It's just, you know, every body is different. And so, yeah, you're probably going to have people get the vaccine and then they have an allergic reaction or whatever, and they just can't get it going forward. But she said, listen, you know what I don't see is a lot of people getting the vaccine and then ended up in the hospital because the vaccine made them sick or they had an adverse reaction. She said, you know, if 1 out of 4 people had an adverse reaction to it, that's totally different. She said, but you're talking like 1 out of 150,000. I'm just throwing out random numbers, such a greater number. Then to me, like it's something that has to be addressed.
One thing that I think, and you know what, in 10, 15, 20 years from now, I don't know that this would be as big of a deal. I said to somebody the other day, nobody gets upset when you're told you have to wear pants to a store.
It's just kind of common sense.
That's kind of thing. And somebody's like, well, that's your, you know, showing, exposing yourself. And I'm like, well, you could wear underwear and that's, you know, it's still, you're not exposing yourself, but it's still inappropriate. And so, but maybe at some point, you know, when you couldn't wear your loincloth to the store, maybe at some point, at some point along the way, wearing pants into a store was not the way of the world, I would guess. And
I'm one of those people. Listen, I would encourage you, from my perspective, talk to your local health provider. They know you better than anybody else, and don't take your advice off social media.
Yeah,
go talk to your doctor you saw for 15 or 20 years that has seen you, you know, knows everything, and then do, you know.
Well, and I would suggest, because we are a business podcast, I would suggest talking to other business owners. And talking about just releasing the fact that this is a difficult time in our lives for business owners.
I think
figure out what other people are doing and really just try to, you know, kind of come together on the best decision.
If you're a business owner, I think my best advice is make a decision, go with that decision, and then give your customers other options. Like, hey, if you want to do business with us, we can deliver it to your car, we can ship it to you, we can do this, we can do that, and just be accommodating for. You're not going to please everybody. I think we're all aware of that.
And we've talked about that, I think, a lot.
On an episode. I think that's what you should do. But I think it's time for us to clock out for the day.
So I don't know. Have you ever had like an actual punch card?
Yeah. When I worked before, we had one and you just slid it in and it.
I had like a card that the time clock was a card that was a toy store I worked at. That was the first place.
Toy store?
Not anything that like punched anything.
No, we had one, you slid them in and it did the noise, it clocked down and gave you like a stamp or whatever.
Interesting. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. Episode 12 of Cashin The Check. I am Tiffany Anton.
I'm Tyler Asher from the Small Business Development Center.
Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, and share with your friends. Tell everybody how amazing Cashin The Check is.
Shout out to the one and only Mark Farley for letting us do this.
And Jeff Brown at the Biz Foundry.
Guys, we're out.